How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So I know this video is a little bit late. I had to rewrite my best in slot guide a number of times already, thanks to all the different changes that we've had this phase so far in Season of Discovery. And I figured, well, I might as well just get the video out now before it becomes Phase 3, while it's still relevant. And if anything else happens making this video obsolete, then you can go ahead and check my WOWHEAD article, which I will keep up to date with any new patches, any new updates, anything like that. Because the past few updates have actually changed our best in slot list a number of times already. As you guys know, Season of Discovery is in a constant state of flux, always changing. So we're going to take a look at my WOWHEAD article, best in slot for Phase 2, Retribution Paladin, and we're going to break it down in this video. If you guys want to read the article as we go through it, go ahead and check the description. There's a link to it down below, as well as links to all my other WOWHEAD articles. So thanks to all my patrons for supporting the channel. They are listed on the screen right now. And if you guys want to become a patron or support the channel, go ahead and check the description or subscribe to the channel. If you think I overlooked anything or something should be ranked higher in the best in slot guide, then go ahead and let me know in a comment and I will fix it, update it as needed. Also, if you guys want to reach me personally, the best place to do that is in the Light Club Discord. There is also a link to that in the description. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So this is your Seal of Martyrdom best in slot set, which is going to be the highest possible DPS in Phase 2. This entire set kind of relies on the weapon automatic crowd pummeler, which has this insane 50% haste buff that you can use every 3 minutes. It's just wild. And without a number of specific weapons that you will see later in the video when we get to the weapons section, you'll actually be using Divine Storm instead of Seal of Martyrdom. There is a couple weapons where Seal of Martyrdom is actually better than Divine Storm on single target now since they buffed it, and we'll get to those in the weapons section. You don't have one of those weapons, you're going to end up using the Divine Storm set, which is very easily obtainable. Let's take a look at that right now. So here is your Divine Storm set. As I'm sure you guys have noticed, the only thing that changes is the weapon. You're going to use the STV PvP sword, Bloodlight Avenger's Edge, and you're going to switch your chest rune from Martyrdom to Divine Storm. Once again, if you don't have one of the Seal of Martyrdom weapons that we're going to talk about in the weapons section, then you're going to use this. You're going to use this weapon, which is very easily obtainable from the PvP event, with Divine Storm in this type of build on all of the fights, until you get yourself a Seal of Martyrdom weapon for single target. Okay, so for helms, we have the blacksmithing helmet is your best in slot. Highly recommend it. It's got an awesome 20% haste buff. Same as the leatherworking helm, which is going to be a bit worse. It has worse stats, but it has the same 20% haste buff on it. So if you're whatever reason leatherworking instead of blacksmithing, you can use that instead. And then pre-raid or pre-crafted, you can get yourself a Raging Berserker's Helm from Scarlet Monastery, or use the Twilight Avengers 3 set from Black Fathom Deeps. Okay, so for shoulders, we have the Trog Slayer Pauldrons from the first boss in Gnomergan. These are your best in slot, but only by a little bit. Below that, we have the Failed Flying Experiment, which is a 10 strength, 10 agility shoulder from a quest in Feralus, which is really honestly not too hard. It requires either killing or distracting a couple 46s, and then you're pretty much fine. So take a couple people with you or take a rogue, you'll be good. I recommend most people just get this and then move on up to the Grubbus Trog Slayer shoulders after that. That's the most easy route of progression. There's also a number of random world drop and BOE shoulders that are still good. Alright, so for cape slot, we have the Drape of Dismantling. This is your best in slot from the second boss in Gnomergan. And below that, we have the Dark Hooded Cape. This will be your pre-raid best in slot. It's going to be tied, though, with all of these of the tiger cloaks. Now, most people, what they're going to do is they're going to get the blood drenched grape from the STV Blood Moon PvP event. It's really cheap. It's only 2 coins, silver coins. And they're just going to use that until they get the Drape of Dismantling from the raid. That's what I recommend doing. That's what I did. I wouldn't bother with any of these other BOE capes, but they are here if you want to get them. The gap between the top cape here and the bottom cape here is not very big at all. So then you're also going to want to put 3 agility on your cape, and you'll be set. Okay, so next we have the chest slot. This is where we are going to pick up the insulated chest guard. This is the leather chest piece, so it's like the feral druid chest. It's going to be our best in slot because it has much better stats than the plate set. And you're going to want to enchant this with +2 all stats. Now, until you get this, you can pick up either your pre-raid best in slot Warforged chestplate, which is from a quest in the Badlands, which is going to require killing 2 level 50 elites. So get out the fishing pole, put the lure on, and go smack some level 50 elites to get this awesome 24 strength chest. You can also continue to use the Twilight Avengers chain for like a pre-raid item until you get the insulated chest. Once again, this comes from a tier token that drops in the raid that you turn in inside of the raid for the chest piece. So make sure you pick the right one. Okay, so next we have the wrist slot. This is going to be the Berserker Bracers from Silverwing Sentinels, which is the Warsong Gulch rep faction. This is your best in slot. Now, I know a lot of you guys are not exalted at the moment. It's pretty hard to get now that it's harder to get Ashenvale rep, and it takes forever to get the rep in the battleground itself. So you have 2 other pretty solid options, the Aim Stabilizers and the Dark Iron Bangles. Both of these are about the same. They're about tied for second best. And if you can't get one of these, then you're pretty much stuck with one of the Tiger Bracers from the auction house or Ironaya's Bracers of Power. Once again, the enchant for this is going to be 5 strength. Okay, for gloves, we have the Machinist's gloves. These are your best in slot. They have a really, really nice 1 hit and 30 extra attack power against mechanical units, which is most of the trash in Gnomergan and the last 4 bosses. So definitely want to get your hands on one of those as soon as you can. Now, there's also the plate gloves from the first boss that are about equal when the boss is not mechanical, but when the boss is mechanical, they just cannot hold a candle to Machinists. So if you're a leather worker still for whatever reason, these gloves are still pretty good from phase 1. Problem is that they increase the threat that you generate, which can be an issue for some of the paladins with automatic crowd pummeler and stuff like that, or with tanks that don't generate as much threat. But they are not going to be best in slot because they require giving up engineering or blacksmithing, or I guess for some of you guys, enchanting. So after that, we have, Crag Fists of the Tiger. Very hard to get because you have to get lucky on the of the Tiger enchantment. Those are from Old Men. You have the Gloves of Holy Might, which a lot of people have probably already seen on the auction house. They don't give the attack power against undead, obviously, because there are no undead mobs in Gnomergan, but they are still pretty well statted regardless. And then in the number 4 slot, we have Arcane Accuracy and Gauntlets of Divinity. These are from Cathedral, so what I would imagine most people are going to do is they're going to get these Cathedral gloves and then upgrade them with either Machinists or Grubby Gauntlets. And you're going to want to put 5 strength on these as well. For waist, you can use either the power assisted lifting belt if you are able to benefit from the weapon skill, or you can use the hyperconductive gold wrap, which is the engineering belt. So if you don't need the weapon skill, then you're definitely going to want to get your hands on the gold wrap. You want to have at least 3 weapon skill from some source, whether it's like a human racial, like using a sword or a mace, or from this belt. If you don't get 3 weapon skill from one of these sources, it might put you a little bit behind on DPS. So if you're a human using an axe, you can get by using a lifting belt. It will be about tied with the gold wrap. In that scenario, if you are using an automatic crowd pummeler or some other mace or sword, then you're definitely going to want to get the gold wrap, because it will just be much better, as you will not need the weapon skill. Now, the one thing about the lifting belt as well is that using it allows you to drop engineering for enchanting, and that lets you get the enchanted sigil, which adds a little bit of damage. But the reason that this is so good, you might be thinking like, hey, I'm going to lose my bombs if I do that. But you can still use easy throw dynamite, which is still pretty good at this level. If you do not have engineering and you don't need weapon skill, then you can go ahead and get the dark vision girdle. It's a nice one-hit 24 attack power belt. And then for your pre-raid options, you have the 4 champions belt from the rare spawn in Razorfen Downs, or the Arathi Basin honored belt. They're both pretty much the same. In between your best belts and your pre-raid belts, you have the other belts from Gnomergan Raid, Trog Berserker and Skullduggery. Both of them are from the first boss. They're about tied. And then if you think farming the rare spawn in Razorfen Downs is too hard, or farming honored in Arathi Basin, then you can get the 14 strength belt from a quest in Fairless. So for legs, we obviously want to complete our 2-set bonus and get ourselves the insulated leg guards. They are just really, really well statted. Until you get the insulated leg guards, your best pre-raid option is going to be the Centurion leg plates. These are from a quest in the Searing Gorge. You're going to want to group for this. Maybe some people with some fishing poles or some ranged hunters, as you got to kill 2 level 52 elites. So if that sounds like too much of a headache for you, I would recommend getting the Scarlet leggings from Scarlet Monastery and using those until you can get yourself a pair of the insulated leg guards from Raid. Okay, so for boots, we are going to get the Shin Kicker boots from Deliver to McKinley quest in Teneris. This is on the east coast of Teneris. You go to the cove where all the pirates are, you get a shipment, you turn it in, you take it to Booty Bay, and then you get these nice 10 strength 9 agility boots. Now, we're not going for the 3-set bonus on the insulated set because it gives dagger skill and barrel attack power, which we do not need, obviously. So that's why we're going to stick with these, which are the best statted boots you can get at this point in the game. Now, pretty close behind the Shin Kicker boots are these random world drop boots, which are 10 agility 9 strength instead of 10 strength 9 agility. And then in number 3 tier, we have the Twilight Avengers boots. If you get the 3-set bonus, they can still be used. We have Gnomebot Operators boots. Those are from Gnomergan. We have the insulated work boots, which you don't need for the set bonus, of the Tiger Gothic Sabatons. And then in number 4, we have Hazard boots, which are the plate set boots. And we have the Arathi Basin Revered boots. You're going to want to put 3 agility on the boots. Now, the thing about the Arathi boots is they do have a run speed increase on them, but that doesn't really benefit us very much because we have Pursuit of Justice, and not putting points into Pursuit of Justice doesn't really benefit us very much. You can put it into benediction or deflection, but other than that, it doesn't really help. And it also does not give mounted speed like Pursuit of Justice does, which is a nice quality of life thing to have. For neck, we have the best in slot neck coming from the final boss in Gnomergen. It comes from the engineering notes that drop from him. It starts a quest that you turn in the major city, Ironforge, and then you will get this neck. Other than that, your options are, the best option for pre-raid is Marsh Chain of the Tiger or Tellurium Necklace of Strength, but these might be pretty hard to find, and if you do find them, they might be a little bit expensive. So a lot of people are probably going to use either Sentinel's Battalion, which is from Honored Warsong Gulch Rep, or High Tide Choker from Black Fathom Deeps until they get themselves a Pork. Now, there's also the Shadow Shard Pendant, which is from a quest outside of Martyrdom, another solid neck, and all three of these are pretty much tied. So get yourself one of these three necks and pretty much use it until you get the final boss neck. Okay, for rings, there's only one ring inside of the Gnomergen raid that we're after. That is the Hypercharged Gear of Devastation. And the other best in slot ring is going to be your Protector's Band, which is from Honored with the Silverwing Sentinels Warsong Gulch Rep faction. You can actually equip two of these. So there is a level 38 version that you see here. Then there is another level 28 version that you see here with slightly worse stats. You can actually use both of these at the same time. So what you're going to do is get yourself a 38 version and a 28 version and use those both until you get the ring from Gnomergen. Okay? There's other rings here that are also good. Marsh Ring of the Tiger, Thunderbrow Ring, Jet Loop of Strength, Assault Band, but they're all pretty much equal to the Protector's Band at level 28. So I wouldn't worry too much about spending money on any of these BOEs. What I would do is I would just get yourself a Protector's Band. Alright, Trinkets is a nice and fun one. The best trinket, Domesticated Attack Chicken. It has basically it spawns a chicken that will fight for you for 90 seconds, and it has a chance to give you and your party members a buff that will give you all 5% attack speed. So this is the notorious Battle Squawk that was used and abused throughout of Vanilla and TPC Classic. So if you have it, you're always going to put it on instead of your weakest trinket whenever the cooldown is ready. It's a long 30-minute cooldown, so you're not going to use it all the time. You cannot swap it off after you spawn the chicken, otherwise the chicken will disappear. You have to keep it equipped until you get the Battle Squawk buff, or the chicken despawns. Now sometimes the chicken will not do a squawk, and it will instead enrage and do respectable damage, but you can also buff it with Blessing of Might and things like that. So it's worth, even if it doesn't squawk, it's worth to keep it out until it despawns, essentially. Now, anytime this trinket is on cooldown, then, or if you just don't have it yet, then your best two trinkets will be the Gyromatic Experiment from the last boss in Gnomergen, Thermoplug. This has a nice 5% attack speed boost on it. And then the Void Pearl from Black Fathom Deeps is still a great trinket for the 18 attack power. Now there's also this Bloodlight Crusaders Radiance, which is from the PvP event. You cannot equip it at the same time as the Avenger's Edge sword from the same PvP event. And it's not super useful. What it does is it's like an AoE attack that does 150 damage. And it's on a long 5-minute cooldown. It's not that great for single target, but it's better than nothing if you do not have a second damage dealing trinket at this time. And then you also have Recombobulator for mana, but honestly, who really needs mana at this point? Okay, so now we're getting to the juicy stuff. I have weapon rankings split into Seal of Martyrdom and Divine Storm weapons, and the simple reason for that is that Seal of Martyrdom wants faster weapons and Divine Storm wants slower weapons. This is due to the recent changes that buffed Martyrdom and made it normalized. And this is also due to the fact that Divine Storm is not normalized. So we'll talk about that in depth in my next video, where we are going to go over all the recent changes to Paladin and the math behind it. So thanks to the buffs to Martyrdom recently, there is now a handful of specific weapons that are going to be listed here in the Martyrdom rankings that will be better with Seal of Martyrdom than Divine Storm. Okay? And if the weapon is not listed here, then it's not better than using the STV PvP sword with Divine Storm. So these are only weapons that can out DPS using Divine Storm with the STV Bloodlight Avenger's Edge. Okay? I figured that's an easily attainable setup, and that's kind of the ballpark to include weapons on the Martyrdom chart. So obviously your best in slot weapon is Crowd Pummeler. It's just insane. It's got a 50% attack speed for 30 seconds, which is an insane amount of time, and it's every 3 minutes, which is pretty quick. It's got good stats. The only downside to it is it has nerfed base damage, so the base damage is lower than what you would expect for a level 40 blue. And it's also super fast. It has a 2.0 speed, which is the fastest possible two-hander in the game. And that makes it scale extremely well with Seal of Martyrdom. I'm not going to go into the math behind it, but it loves faster weapons. And not only is it fast, but it has a haste buff, so it's even better, essentially. Because with Seal of Martyrdom, the faster your weapon, the more valuable that haste is going to be. So what you're going to want to do with this is, with your Crowd Pummeler, you're going to want to use the buff with your blacksmithing helmet or leatherworking helmet if you have that, with your trinket and any other haste buffs you possibly can have, and you're going to stack them all together to get the most out of it. Because if you stack them all together, you actually get extra haste because they all scale with each other multiplicatively in vanilla. Now, once the haste buff is over, you're actually going to keep the Crowd Pummeler equipped for the rest of the fight. You're never going to take it off. It used to be worth it to swap weapons to something stronger, like probably Jackhammer, but that's no longer the case, and now you're going to want to keep Crowd Pummeler on all the time. So this is a absolutely massive upgrade. It's going to be well over 100 DPS for pretty much every Ret Paladin out there who upgrades to this weapon. And on a fight like Grubbus, which is like a 30-second fight, it'll actually be over 230 DPS compared to the Nightblade, which is like the next most obtainable item, right? But most people probably don't even have that. So it's a absolutely massive upgrade. Honestly, at this point, we are probably getting the most DPS from it, but I don't have the math to back that up at the moment. It just feels like it's super insane for us at the moment. So there's also the Jackhammer in the number 2 slot, which it doesn't hold a candle to the Crowd Pummeler, but it's still very good. It has its own attack speed buff on it that has pretty decent uptime of around 35%. And it doesn't give as much attack speed, but it can be pretty solid on 2 to 3 minute fights. And it's a little bit slower, so it's 2.5 speed instead of a 2.0 speed, and it has more base damage, so it's 39 DPS, which is higher than the Crowd Pummeler, but it's extremely rare. It's just like Pendulum of Doom. It's got like a 0.01% drop rate or something like that in Uldaman Trash. So you're probably never going to get one. If you do get one, you're probably going to have to pay a lot of money for it. And it's really just not worth the money anymore because Crowd Pummeler is just better. So you also have Nightblade in the number 3 spot. Still a super solid item because of the high weapon DPS. Below that, you have the Rocket Cleaver, which is still good despite being a little bit on the slower side, thanks to the really good stats. And then below that, in the number 5 tier, you have the Head Chopper and the Giga Chopper. So once again, you're looking for one of these 6 items before you switch to Seal of Martyrdom. The recommended enchant is going to be Iron Counterweight. That's because it's better than Dismantle just on pure damage, and it also works against all enemy types. And the 3% haste that it gives will scale with other sources of haste multiplicatively, which means it's going to average higher than 3%. So if you don't have one of those weapons yet, then you're going to use Divine Storm with the Bloodlight Avenger's Edge until you get one. You're also going to use the counterweight on your Divine Storm weapons, and once again, which belt you use might depend on which weapon you're using if you're a human. So I split these rankings by race for Divine Storm into human and dwarf rankings because humans will get slightly more value from swords and maces due to their racial. So Bloodlight Avenger's Edge and Rocket Cleaver are going to be about tied for a human. Obviously, if you have the Rocket Cleaver, you're going to use Martyrdom anyway. And what I would imagine most people are going to do is they're going to get either Mograin's Might or Bonebiter or Ravager while they're leveling up. They're going to upgrade to Avenger's Edge, and at that point, you're looking for a raid weapon or a Nightblade, one of the Martyrdom weapons, to switch to Martyrdom, preferably the Crowd Pummeler. So that's pretty much the most common route of progression here. I would recommend trying to get a Mograin's Might, and then getting an Avenger's Edge, and then getting a Martyrdom weapon. For Dwarf, the only difference in the rankings is that swords and maces are not going to perform quite as well because they don't have the racial weapon skill bonus. For a Dwarf, the Thermoplug's Rocket Cleaver is going to be better than the Avenger's Edge, but obviously if you have the Rocket Cleaver, once again, you're going to be using Martyrdom instead of Avenger's Edge, at least on single target fights. And then the difference in the rankings, you can see the axes are a little bit higher ranked because of there's no difference in weapon skill here. The Pendulum of Doom is pretty solid for a Divine Storm build as a Dwarf. What I would imagine most dwarves are going to do is to get a Bonebiter or a Ravager. Once again, use that until you get a Avenger's Edge, and then upgrade that to a Rocket Cleaver or some other Martyrdom weapon like Crowd Pummeler. So I won't spend too much time going through all the different weapons here. I'm sure you guys are familiar with all of them. They're not super noteworthy because I would imagine most people are just going to get one of the Scarlet Monastery weapons and use that until they get the very easily obtainable Avenger's Edge. For Libram slot, we have only 2 Librams in the game, the Benediction mana cost reduction Libram and the Black Fathom Deep's 15 attack power 2 undead Libram, and obviously there are no undead at level 40 in Gnomergan raid, so I would not worry about your Libram too much. It doesn't really have very much impact at all this phase. That's why Benediction is pretty much the only choice, because it's the only thing that really does anything for Gnomergan. So that's pretty much it for this article, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope that I covered everything in enough detail. And if you guys want to check out the article, it's all right here, link in the description. Also, links to all of my other articles are down there as well. Once again, just want to thank all my patrons and anybody who supports the channel. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and my next video will be covering the recent changes to Paladin. We'll talk a little bit about Shoutout. We'll talk about Seal of Martyrdom and the math behind all the recent changes, and we'll get kind of deep into the nitty-gritty of all the equations and everything, and explain just exactly what they did to cause the situation that we're in now. So stay tuned for that. I'm pretty excited to get that video out. Should be out sometime in the next week. So thanks again, guys. I really appreciate you. If you like my article, go ahead and give it a star rating or leave a comment down at the bottom and tell me what you think. So we'll see you next time. Have a good night, everybody.
This show was brought to you by Light Club, where monkeys go to church.